What is up, guys, and welcome back to another video. And today we are going over 10 reasons why Andrew Garfield was the best Spider-Man. Coming in at number 10, we have the mystery of his parents. The Amazing Spider-Man was released only 5 years after Spider-Man 3, causing many people to believe that it was way too soon for the superhero to get a reboot. Mark Webb wanted to include the death of Uncle Ben because it's an extremely important moment in Peter's life, but wasn't sure how the audience would react. The last thing moviegoers want to see is a story that has already been told before, so Webb knew that he had to make some major differences if he wanted to keep people interested in the movie. In order to differentiate itself from the Raimi trilogy, the Amazing Spider-Man movies featured Peter attempting to solve the mystery of his parents' deaths. The Raimi trilogy briefly mentioned his parents passing away, while in the MCU, Spider-Man hasn't even brought it up yet, so it just felt like a breath of fresh air to see the storyline explored in The Amazing Spider-Man. I know that these movies get a lot of hate, but his parents being indirectly involved in their son's superpowers and having a connection to Oscorp made for a potentially great change in the Spider-Man story. Because Andrew's Spider-Man had to go through the pain of losing his uncle and his parents, we saw more anger in him that had to be harnessed into heroism. The mystery of his parents not only caused the audience to find the story more compelling, but it also made them sympathize with Spider-Man. Number 9, amazing, no pun intended, web-slinging scenes. You can spend years and years hating on the Amazing Spider-Man movies, but there's no denying the fact that they had way better web-slinging scenes than the Raimi trilogy and Spider-Man Homecoming. Don't get me wrong, Tobey's Spider-Man had some pretty good web-slinging shots, but there was only so much the special effects team could do with a movie that came out during that year. As for Tom's Spider-Man, we barely got the chance to see him swinging in Homecoming, which was a huge disappointment because nothing feels better than watching Spidey swing through New York City. Fans usually argue whether or not the Amazing Spider-Man movies had strong directing, acting, and writing, but pretty much all of them would agree that they're visually stunning. Just take a look at the crane scene. It managed to become one of the greatest moments in a live-action Spider-Man movie because of the awesome web-slinging shots. On top of that, Webb mentioned that he would literally rip Spider-Man poses straight out of the comics, which shows that he truly cared about the source material. Number 8, he highlights Peter's intelligence. Let's be honest, if you're taking a test and Tobey, Andrew, and Tom Spider-Man are all sitting close to you, you're definitely going to look over Andrew's shoulder. The original Spider-Man trilogy didn't really spend a lot of time emphasizing on Peter's intelligence, which is evident when Raimi decides to go with organic webbing instead of web shooters. The MCU tried to make Spider-Man seem smart by showing him being a part of the academic decathlon team, but his childish remarks sometimes make you question his intelligence. Plus, there are moments when he feels a little overshadowed because the MCU focuses more on establishing Iron Man and the Hulk as the smartest people in the world than Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man movies, however, perfectly illustrated just how smart Peter truly is by including him participating in scientific experiments and making homemade gadgets such as his door lock. He understood and utilized his information in his father's research, which is definitely not high school reading material. Also, we got the chance to see him working side by side with Dr. Connors, helping him come up with the equation to regenerate missing limbs. Even his passion for art and photography were better touched upon, showing that his intelligence wasn't just restricted to scientific knowledge. Number 7, the relationship between Aunt May and Peter. In the comics, Aunt May and Peter are known for having heartfelt conversations, which is part of the reason why her death in The Amazing Spider-Man number 400 was so impactful. Overall, the Raimi trilogy did a pretty good job at continuing the tradition of having emotional moments between Aunt May and Peter, but their screen time together was limited since Spider-Man had his own place. Though I enjoyed some of the interactions MCU Spider-Man had with Aunt May, there were times when I was taken out of the scenes because of the weird comments about her looks. As for the Amazing Spider-Man movies, I would definitely say that they showcase the best relationship between Peter and Aunt May, all thanks to strong acting performances from Andrew Garfield and Sally Field. Each time those two were on screen, magic was created. They didn't just support each other financially, but also emotionally since they were both grieving over the loss of Uncle Ben. Aunt May came across more as a mother than an aunt, which was illustrated in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 when she called Peter her boy, and then he responded by saying that she's his everything. This moment became even more emotional when you realized that she knew some information about his father, but was afraid to tell Peter because she didn't want to hurt him. Number 6, his interaction with kids. Whenever you watch a superhero movie, you probably notice that the theater typically has a large audience of children who constantly ask their parents questions because they have no idea what's going on. It's important to understand that these characters play a fundamental part of their lives. Andrew Spider-Man would spend most of his days going against crime lords and other villains who were big threats to the city, but he also took the time out of his day to help little kids out who were getting bullied. I know the scene of Spider-Man fixing that kid's science project and walking him home lasted only 40 seconds, but those are the moments that remind you why he's such a lovable superhero. There is also a scene where a little kid tried to take on Rhino, clearly showing that the children in Andrew's Spider-Man universe looked up to him so much that they were willing to fight for him. Even when the cameras were off, Andrew still acted like a superhero by interacting with a bunch of kids who loved Spider-Man. When he was filming The Amazing Spider-Man 2, he took some time off so he could hit the basketball court and play with the other kids while he was still in his costume. Number 5, the chemistry between Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy. Remember how I mentioned that The Amazing Spider-Man differentiated itself from the Raimi trilogy by including the mystery of his parents? Well, they also took a different approach when they decided to introduce Gwen Stacy instead of focusing on the relationship between MJ and Peter. Overall, I liked Kirsten's performance as MJ, and I see a lot of potential in Zendaya's version of MJ, but I still think that Emma Stone's Gwen was the standout female character out of all the Spider-Man movies. From the very first scene they had together, it was clear that Andrew Spider-Man and Emma's Gwen just had the connection that instantly worked so well. They had such an effortless teasing banter, most of which was completely improvised, so it shouldn't come off as a surprise that they actually fell in love with each other while filming the movie. Andrew was able to perfectly capture how a teenager would act if he was hopelessly in love, which improved his performance because many guys were able to see a part of themselves in Spider-Man. In fact, people loved the chemistry between Spider-Man and Gwen so much that her death scene ended up becoming the best part of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Number 4, he was a hero before the powers. Tobey's Spider-Man didn't really do anything heroic until the death of Uncle Ben taught him the most valuable lesson that he ever learned. With great power comes great responsibilities. We never had the opportunity to see Tom Spider-Man go through his origin story, so it's highly unlikely that we'll ever find out if he acted like a hero before he was bitten by a radioactive spider. From the very beginning of The Amazing Spider-Man, the writers made sure fans knew that Peter always wanted to help those who were too afraid to stand up for themselves, even if he was powerless. When Flash was picking on some random kid, many people were laughing and cheering him on in the most unrealistic way possible because let's be real, no high school bully does this. Anyways, Peter was literally the only one who knew that something's gotta be wrong with these people if they actually find it funny to watch someone being forced to eat vegetables. In order to stop Flash from tormenting that guy, Peter purposely called him by his real name, Eugene, because he knew that it was going to grab his attention. Flash began punching Peter until Gwen finally intervened in the situation, which proved that he would rather put himself through pain than watch someone else suffer. As ridiculous as some of the dialogue in this scene may be, it's also effective because it builds Peter as a nice guy who's worthy of being gifted with amazing abilities. Number 3, he perfectly nailed Spider-Man's humor. Peter may have been the shy and awkward kid when he was in high school, but his confidence just skyrocketed as soon as he became Spider-Man. A defining characteristic of Spider-Man is that he somehow feels comfortable enough to make snarky comments and terribly timed jokes while he's fighting bad guys. Unfortunately, the Raimi trilogy lacked the right amount of humor aside from J.K. Simmons' hilarious performance as J. Jonah Jameson and those cameos from Bruce Campbell. There were a few moments where the writers tried to include jokes, like that one time Peter asked a wrestler if his husband made his outfit for him, but that just came across as forced and cringy. With Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, the comedic moments actually felt natural, and you can easily see the transition from the awkward Peter to the confident Spider-Man. One of the greatest moments in The Amazing Spider-Man was when he messed around with the car thief, pretended to be afraid of the small knives, and then used his webs to push the criminal against the wall. There's also that priceless Spider-Man scene where he tried to hide his suit from Aunt May and claimed that he was cleaning the chimney even though they don't have one. That right there is just classic Spider-Man. Number 2, he always loved Spider-Man. I think that everyone knows an actor can only pull off a strong performance if they truly feel passionate about the character they're playing. Just take a look at Ben Affleck. He did a stellar job as Batman when he actually cared about the project, but then suddenly looked like he wasn't even trying in Justice League because he lost interest in the universe. Luckily, Andrew was a lifelong Spider-Man fan, so he would read as many comics as possible so he could accurately depict the character on the big screen. Since Spider-Man has always been a huge part of his life, he understood how important this character was to all fans around the world. It might be a little unfair to include this on the list because Tobey and Tom obviously have a strong love for Spider-Man as well, but there was just something different about the way Andrew looked up to this character. Andrew even admitted that he brought a picture of his 4-year-old self dressed as Spider-Man to the audition and began crying when he put on the suit for the first time. If you listen to his speech during the Amazing Spider-Man Comic-Con panel, you know that he meant it when he said that it was an honor to play a character who saved his life. And number 1, the best overall actor. I think that most people would agree that Andrew is a stronger actor than Tobey, but I'm sure that there are a bunch of Tom fans who are coming up with a long list of reasons as to why I'm wrong. Look, the way Tom managed to make everyone bawl their eyes out in Infinity War and Endgame proves that he's a fantastic actor, but Andrew's filmography is just slightly more impressive. Before Andrew was Spider-Man, he gave the performance of a lifetime in The Social Network and is known for having the best scene in the entire movie. After it was announced that he would no longer play Spider-Man, he still landed roles in movies such as Silence, which was directed by the legend Martin Scorsese, and Under the Silver Lake. He even scored an Oscar nomination for his work in Hacksaw Ridge, proving that professionals in the movie business recognize him as an extremely talented actor. If you take a look at some of the heartbreaking scenes between Peter and Aunt May, as well as Spider-Man's reaction to the death of Gwen, you'd know that Andrew literally poured his heart out in both movies. And that is it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We hope y'all enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'll see you all in the next video.